Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and what a marvellous month of May it has been. Joining me tonight are two co-hosts, and in no particular order. Good evening, Grapeviney, how are you?
I'm excellent, Andy, thank you.
And also joining us back again, Supermercado. Good evening, how are you?
And I'm not leaving until we stop winning.
Yeah, well, that's when you'll get fired.
It's like players growing beards during playoffs and winning streaks. I'm not going anywhere until the losses come. So let's keep going, Dees.
Well, I was certainly shocked by the result. Going into the game, I don't think I was. I wasn't confident. I think I've still got that MFC SS inside of me. I thought it might have been a repeat of our second game against Adelaide, but boy, was I wrong, and I am thrilled to be wrong. Grapeviney, I know you were confident.
Yeah, I actually thought we might thrash them, but I certainly didn't expect the margin in the end. But I've actually got a concern. I know there's a lot of positive things to talk about, and we're going to go through them all on the show tonight, but I think there's a major concern that no one is talking about, and I wanted to ask you guys about it straight off the bat. What are you wearing to the grand final? Because
let's not talk the G word. I'm not even talking the F word yet, but the G word is not even in my vocab at the moment. But okay, it's a fair question. Supermercado, what are you wearing?
Well, I'm currently winning the auction item for Reece Healy's Shanghai Showdown jumper with number 50 on the back. So I might slap that on, put the blazer I bought a couple of years ago in the auction, put that on as well. And possibly the Mexican wrestling mask I wore to the Scully Carnival of Hate game when I held up that Judas 31 banner on one side. So maybe that triple ensemble will do nicely.
Grapeviney, was there any particular reason you bought this up? Do you have something in mind, or...?
No, but I'll probably rock out the circa 1991-92 Demons headband that was in stock for a year or two around the Todd Viney and Schwartz era. So no, that's all I've picked out at this stage.
Was that an official club item that you could rock on down
to
the
Demon Megastore? There was a white version that had the cartoon Demon on it, and then there were also red, mainly sort of red with a bit of blue checkered stuff on it too.
I think I actually
and they're only around for a few years, but I think I've still got both of them somewhere in the old cupboard.
I got a big box of old records and books and stuff like that from somebody, and I think that was in there as well. The white one with the cartoon on it, the more official AFL one. I did see a picture the other day from the collection from your favourite, the Random Images on Demon Wiki, and it was Jacko and Kevin Dyson in I think it was an offcut from a merchandise photo shoot from the early 90s, and Jacko was wearing a very nice sort of polo shirt and baseball cap combination and some unofficial tracksuit pants that were clearly not from the Melbourne collection, and Kevin Dyson was wearing a very shiny jacket that was reminiscent of the shine factor you get on our new away jumper.
I did see that image. I think you put it up on Twitter, and yes, it's now in my collection, so thank you.
I accidentally labelled Kevin Dyson as Chris Sullivan at first because I obviously had Chris Sullivan on the mind after we crossed the fabled Chris Sullivan line at 3/4 time for 2 weeks in a row for the first time for God knows how long.
I used to get, talking about the headbands, I used to get extremely frustrated when opposition players would snatch it off Viney's head. But
there was one occasion he went feral when that happened. It might have been against Carlton.
But not so angry as the time when Jimmy Steins was wearing that hat, if you recall, and I think Dion Scott of Brisbane Bears probably at the time, or maybe they were the Lions, probably Bears, ripped his hat off and ripped it in half, I think.
Which is a pretty good effort to rip a hat in half.
Yes, quality workmanship on that hat.
Just on the issue of Demon Wiki, which Supermercado was talking about before, and I note that there was a post in relation to Roger Ellingworth on the board a short time ago, and I was surprised just looking up his entry on Demon Wiki that there was no acknowledgement of his role in footy's most famous interchange, which is Healy off, Ellingworth on. Bloody weak as piss. And that should certainly be a part of his profile.
And is it true
shot
that his
to,
nickname...
shot to footy fame on that.
Was his nickname Custard Guts, or was someone just ribbing me when they told me that?
I hadn't heard that one, I must say.
I thought it was an odd nickname, but, footy clubs, you never know.
No, you never know. But we're not here to talk about the old days. We're here to talk about the days that we're in at the moment, and what beautiful days. It's a beautiful day and a beautiful month, especially to be a Melbourne Football Club fan. What a game. Great Viney, who was your best player? What was your favourite?
Well, it's hard to narrow them down. I won't go for my best, but, the best was Angus Brayshaw, I thought, but we'll talk about him in a minute.
Yeah.
I wanted to point out, and picking one from the 22, Jake Lever, who, and I think Goody said this in the post-match, he owned the game in the first 10, 15 minutes. He would have picked up half a dozen touches, a number of marks, a few free kicks, and absolutely stamped his authority all over the game very early. So I thought that was just superb. There'd been this whole faux concern about Adelaide hopping into him and the kind of reception he was going to get, and that was just a non-issue in the end.
Were you surprised that they didn't get stuck into him? I know we sort of touched on whether they should or they shouldn't, but I'm sure he was expecting it.
Hard to get stuck into someone when you're 5 goals down, 10 minutes into the first quarter. So,
but they didn't even get stuck into him before the game started. That was I was surprised that there was nothing.
Yeah, I was surprised by that as well.
A bit of push and shove.
As we discussed last week, I think we all know it's it's fake stuff, and they're all going to smile at the end, but. I thought it was very light on that one bloke. Was it Fogarty?
He just sort of an elbow.
The kind of nudge you would give to an opponent in any game.
That's standard.
Let alone this game. I'm not going to say that that's indicative of how they were going to fly the white flag immediately after. Like it would have changed anything if they'd gone and punched on with him. But I really was surprised that they didn't have a few more people run through him and at least give him a nudge.
Yeah, I was extremely surprised.
Especially when you've got a coach who has pre-season camps when they kidnap players and blindfold them on buses and then spends 3/4 time running around, basically committing acts that anywhere else would be considered workplace bullying on people. But yet the players don't get into the guy who should be, at least for token reasons, a figure of disdain for their club.
So they did it. They did a quite intense camp at the beginning of the year. Is that correct?
They
that
did,
was this year?
and for all the shit we've copped for not going on the Christian Salem brick dropping camp. I think if you're just taking it on benefits of camps, I think we've had a win on that front. Yeah,
I was going to say, I'm not. Look, there's still a lot of footy to play, and I'm sure if things go south, that camp might be brought up again. But you have a look at the two teams that went on a camp and didn't go on a camp, and they had vastly different results on the weekend.
Well, part of their camp was they had to fill out them.
Go ahead.
I'm in the campers cost us side of the equation. We could be winning by 150 points or more had we gone on the camp. So it's an opportunity loss for mine.
All right, so we all agree Lever was sensational. I mean, those intercept scores are just, he's averaging, I think, 10 in this past month and 6 for the entire year. He's just going from strength to strength, and I think it's solidified the reason we went after him very hard. And I think when all is said and done, that trade will come out the winners on that one.
And he looks like
we already are.
To be wrecking them as well. He just had this joy on his face as it was happening, and I thought it was funny in the post-match interview when he just instantly said, "We've got to play them again in round 19." It's like he already knew exactly when we played them the next time. So it was good to see him having a good time, because at the start of his run, obviously he was. We were having a few problems in defence, and he looked relatively miserable. This time he was flying.
Speaking of happy footballers, how funny was the Clayton Oliver smile, the smiling handball in the last quarter, running through the centre, and he's facing forward and then dishes out the side to Jonesy and had this huge smile on his face, which I think they mentioned in the commentary. So they're all having a ball at the moment.
Following on from his broad smile when he kicked the goal that rose the margin above 100 the week before.
Was it a bigger smile than the smile that he gave the two of us, Grapeviney, when he was running around the boundary line and we screamed out to him?
Yes. Indeed, yeah.
Indeed. All right. Supermercado, who stood out for you?
I would certainly concur that Brayshaw was the best player on the ground, but someone I wanted to talk about was someone I didn't even have in my top 5, and it was obviously a very hard week to narrow it down to 5, as opposed to some weeks where it's very hard to get to 5. I have been so impressed in the last few weeks by Bailey Fridge.
Yeah.
We've gone and taken a guy who's a proven goal kicker in the VFL and taken him away from being a goal kicker. He's not just playing in the forward line. This might be a naive view of it, but he's almost doing a Jaden Hunt job. He's coming up and down the wing. He's setting up play. I think, again, we have to wait. You can't take it on a 5-week sample size. You've got to wait a bit more. But it would be remarkable if we could take him and turn him into that really vital link player, considering what effectively he was drafted for. You don't know what they saw and what they thought they were going to do with him in the future. But he came to us with the idea that he was going to be a forward, and he has been absolutely sensational the last few weeks.
Yeah, if there's the one negative, I think there was one thing. The ball went forward and was sort of kicked to him. He was sort of by himself. I'm not sure whether he fumbled or not, but he got pushed off the ball quite easily, and I think that's just due to his size, and I can't wait till he gets another full pre-season under him. And, you know, he's got a slight frame anyway. I'm not sure how much he'll be able to bulk up, but he'll be able to bulk up a little bit more than he is now.
You only notice that because it's the one time for the whole day
exactly.
that an Adelaide player was near one of our players inside the forward 50.
Exactly, but it's not a knock on him. It's just something that I can't wait till he improves that part of his game. And
he's a brilliant decision maker. There was that passage of play where we were handballing the ball around in the forward line, and he was about to perhaps have a shot, but then he just stopped, looked, and executed a perfect snap pass to Nibbler. I think it must have been in the second quarter, sort of over the shoulder, and it was just perfect execution. His decision making and his skills are A1. So even if the sort of wing experiment doesn't work in the end, he's going to find a place in the team, absolutely. But as Supermercado says, he looks great doing that linking role at the moment.
I thought our kicking into the 50, particularly even once we were in the 50 and then finding someone free closer to goal, was fantastic and allowed us to, we had such an accurate, scoring ratio because we were getting guys closer to goal on their own, and able to slot through some relatively easy goals. Brayshaw, we've talked about him. He was fantastic, and I noticed that he had 32 uncontested possessions. He was just finding space everywhere. No one was manning him at all, I don't think, and he was just running riot.
And that's just adding to the weaponry in the midfield that now you've got Viney in there as well.
Who had 20 contested possessions and 17 uncontested. So
exactly. So you got those two, and you got Gawn, who's occasionally looks like a midfielder rather than a ruckman. He's so confident in working on the ground level that we're growing so many options that it's just going to be hard for teams to cover us. But it's just a case of making sure we're using the ball when we get it out wide, which is probably where, not to get into the great Dom Tyson debate again, but that's where we started to fall down, where we'd get the ball clear and then there'd be a turnover. And he's certainly not the only one who does it, but it's really important to make sure, especially when we're going forward quickly, and as we saw on the weekend, absolutely unlocking the opposition defence with the quick entries, to make sure that we don't blow it halfway with a flub kick or a bad decision.
Yeah, the thing about Brayshaw, particularly on the weekend, was he was always in the right position for the outside ball, or so often he was. There'd be one or two quick hand passes inside, and then it'd be sort of out to the wing, and Brayshaw would be there. And his skills on both sides of the body are pretty good. So, Did you see the video of him after the interview with him after the game, where he was almost in tears, I think?
Yeah, I was almost in tears as well. Tears of joy. But you wouldn't be.
He's so happy to be back playing footy,
and good footy as well. You would, if you didn't know better, you would think he was a natural left footer.
Yeah,
and also he bobbed up and kicked 3 goals, and 2 of them were from 50 or just inside 50. Just beautiful to watch.
Yeah, and the thing that he really said in that interview after the game was how much he missed winning and being with the boys in those moments after the siren goes. So the players are really building up a big bond, and I think my favourite moment from the match came post-match when Clary posted a photo to Instagram of him hugging Jack Viney, and the message was, so happy that this guy's back. And you just think, imagine that you've dominated in the centre for 8 weeks. You're one of the, clearance and tackling machines in the competition. And then all of a sudden Jack Viney comes back into the side to take some of the load off you. So Clary must be absolutely loving life at the minute.
Well, and the majority of the team are actually in an era now where they're used to winning. Like if you go back 5 years, because I remember this well because it was the week of my wedding anniversary last week. So I remember we played Freo the next day, lost by 90 points. There's only 3 people left from that team, and it was Jones, Jetta, and Gawn. Yeah. And Jetta and Gawn basically did nothing because obviously that was before Jetta's ruse-led revival. The team, the other 19 players that have come to replace everyone else in that team are not mired in the destructive years. So we're building that winning culture. And I know winning culture is probably a cliche, but they're used to winning. So I think that's
absolutely, and more importantly, they expect to win.
Yeah, and the hunger is there, like not just to win, but they know what it's like and they want to do it again and again. And it's not like a cause for celebration when we win one game, unless we win it by 90 points or 109 points. But it's not a surprise and then like, oh, well, we're going to lose for the next 6 weeks. Thank God we won once. There's that more ruthless edge now.
Know what I liked? At the end of the game, Angus kicked that goal on, after the siren, and every guy on the field ran to him. It was like we had won by a point. And I liken it sort of like Hawthorn or something. A few years ago, belting teams and just winning. I don't know. Maybe they got tired of winning. But you just didn't see that, and I don't know. There was just something about it that we'd thrashed a team, but they weren't showboating. They were so wrapped. I don't know if it was because Brayshaw's stamped his authority, his back. It was just so good to see. You can see they're really playing for each other now. Brayshaw, Viney, Oliver all had over 30 possessions. I mean, if you're an opposition team, who do you go out to tag? And if you successfully do one, you're going to have the other 2 running right.
I wouldn't bother trying on Oliver. He does so much work in close that you could have someone hanging off his back like a koala, and he's still gonna get the ball, and he's still gonna get rid of the ball. So I certainly wouldn't be aiming my resources at him if I was trying to tag someone.
A lot's been Neil Bullen. I think the last few weeks he's really showing the contribution he can give to the team. I think earlier on in the year we were critical, sort of he wasn't doing much in the middle, and I think his role now, mainly off the half-forward flank, is proving to be a great move because he's kicking goals, he's sharing it off as well. I'm really happy with Nibbler's contribution to the team.
Can we talk about Jesse?
Jesse, of course, we're going to talk about a lot of players, but Jesse was fantastic. Continued his run of goals in every game this year. I think there's only one other footballer in the league that's done that. One of the Collingwood boys,
Elliott.
And hopefully we can end that run in a few weeks for him. But Jesse, fantastic. I mean, and not just the 5 goals. How many did he give off?
Yeah, well, at least another 2. He gave off the first one with super quick hands to Petrarca.
Yep. And
there was the one
Tom McDonald.
T-Mac, in the final quarter. Could have had a couple others. And then there was the shot that didn't happen on the 3/4 time siren.
That was a brain fade, a complete brain fade.
It was,
I
because
saw
the
him
siren
cracking the
went
sads
quite
after.
early. The siren went quite early in the run-up. So he had plenty of time to sort of adjust and just kick straight. But it went, and then 2 seconds later he played on. So I think he just got confused or something.
I think that he was trying to complain that the guy ran off the mark or something, that he should have got 50.
I thought he was trying to say, why didn't anyone tell me the time was about to run out?
Oh, as in to the other players?
Yeah, he wanted to be notified, basically.
I don't think that's how it works.
But that was the. I think someone posted on the board during the week that, like his hands are almost as good as Oliver's. He's Nick Brewalt with Clayton Oliver's hands. So, he's on fire at the moment. Would he make the All-Australian team on current form? He's third on the Coleman.
He'd have to be in the conversation when you're talking about forwards. Definitely.
20 touches and 11 marks. So
I think it was good that he got amongst the goals, because he's been playing very well the last few weeks, but he's been almost the provider for McDonald. And this week McDonald didn't have as good a game. Still, there wasn't anything wrong with his game, but he took the back seat to Hogan to kick the goals this time. So they're a lethal combination at the moment.
If you're talking All-Australian, there's one player that I reckon he's back into his All-Australian form, and if he continues up, he's a lock for it. Michael Hibberd. I thought he was sensational half-back. I posted something onto both Facebook and Instagram today. It was a play, if you watched on the couch, it was just one of those passages of play. There was about 5 handballs. They weren't those manic handballs. They were sort of positional handballs, and a kick across the ground. Hibberd got it. He kicked it to Omac and then ran down the field. I think Omac kicked it to Fritsch, and Fritsch handballed it off to Hibberd, and Hibberd had a beautiful pass at full pelt to Spargo, who kicked the goal. But that run from Hibberd just,
It's so important in getting those chains started where the ball does get moved quickly down the other end. Like, you look at the reverse would be the Richmond game, where you had the problem being if Hogan was inside 50, no one could get it to him, and when Hogan was outside 50, he had no one to kick it to. And we were just so slow in getting the ball out and getting it into the 50, whereas these times, last few weeks, it's just been expressed from one end to the other. Which you would think that your Luke Beveridges and Nathan Buckley's would be taking significant note of, because it's wrecked these teams in the last few weeks.
Yep.
I'll tell you who I was impressed with. Tim Smith as the other forward option. Really liked his game. Contributed with 2 goals this week. I think he's been great as Wiedemann's replacement while he's been injured, and I think he's going to keep his position for the foreseeable future. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, it's going to be. Well, it's hard to change a team that's averaging 100-point victories in the last 2 weeks. So he'll play again this week for sure. Even I think Wiedemann is back.
The difference to him and Wiedemann, and this is not a knock on Wiedemann, but Smith seems to be holding those marks.
Yes,
he's coming at the ball. He's holding the marks. There was one goal. I think it was the one where Hogan did the nifty handball to Petrarca that was basically set up by Smith just coming straight out of the inside the 50 and taking a big mark and then just dishing the handball off to Hannon straight away.
Yep.
I don't think at the moment you're going to see Wiedemann do that, which is not to say that he won't in the future. And he did. He was not bad when he played, but I think Smith, if we're putting Pedersen on the back burner to looking at the future, which is still a sore point with some of us who are in the pro-Pedersen faction. I think Smith's probably the better option for now.
Yeah, look, I think that's... I love Pedersen too, but you've got to think after the games he's had last couple of weeks, not being able to get in, you don't think there's going to be, barring some injuries, I don't think the door's going to be open for him as much as we'd love him to get a game.
Yep.
I think Smith's pretty... Smith, he has... the second half of last week and this game, he's definitely put himself into the lead in that three-man battle.
How about Jack Viney? The number of contests where his sheer will and brute strength just gets him out of a huge pack of players is just extraordinary. He just rams his way out. He was absolutely back to his best. Wasn't he?
Yeah, and I don't mind that sometimes he gets caught and gets holding the ball against him, but
it's like 1 out of 10 or
that's
1 out
right.
of 15. So, yeah,
I'm happy for him to keep the bullocking work going because he gets most of them out of there.
And he's just got such a good instinct for the contest as well. And you put him and Oliver together, and Oliver almost seems to have a sixth sense sometimes of where to handball. That you put those two in who have that really. Just know what to do in traffic. It's a really big bonus to the midfield.
We could go through every single player because I think every single player sort of had some contribution. From the small guys, Spargo and Hannon, they all did their little bits. Melksham again continuing on from the past few weeks. He's had kicked 2 goals. And I like the stat that I saw during the week that so what was that stat about him? He's won more one-on-one contests inside 50 than any other player in the competition, which is fantastic for a smaller guy. 9 out of 14 one-on-one contests. It's a good stat.
He's a funny kind of small, isn't he? Because if he's one out, he's very strong. So when it's when it's that one-on-one marking situation, even he's just as likely to, or more likely to win. Yeah,
it's another case of getting the ball down there quickly and giving him the chance to get one-on-one with someone and use the body to get rid of them. That creates the goal scoring opportunities. And of course, he's a really good field kick as well. So when he's the one delivering it. There have been some times where he's just unloaded some absolute howitzers to a player, in a perfect position. So he's got the weapon both ways.
Well, you mentioned that since round 6.
Sorry, if saying the weapon is not a trigger to Jake if he's listening from the whole Essendon thing. Sorry about that.
Since round 6, we have also retained possession of the ball 93.3% of the time when Melksham kicks the ball inside 50. So that backs up your statement. Amazing. Everyone, even contribution across the board. Jonesy, great. We always seem to miss Jonesy when we're talking about everyone else, but Jonesy just continues to do Jonesy things.
Plays 250 on the weekend.
Yeah, amazing. Did you hear his presser today? He reckons he's still got 5 or 6 years in him.
Yeah, I saw that.
So,
I don't see why not. I know some people on the board have sort of said they sort of pile Jonesy in with Vince and Jordan, which is a bit strange because he's quite a few years younger, but there's no indication that Jones is sort of slowing down or would be anywhere near retirement. So,
do you think
good to see that?
Do you think in a few years' time he'll take over that Jordan Lewis role across half back if he slows down in the midfield?
That's possible for sure. Yep. He's a pretty good user of the ball.
He's got it in him. Do we think he's got it in him to run down Nita for the games record?
If anyone does it, I'd like it to be him. So what's that? 50 more games. Oh, no, how many did need to play in the end?
Yeah,
I'm
300.
308 without looking at it, before I type it in to look at it onto demonwiki.org.
That's another. Well, he plays the rest of this year, and that's 2 more.
306.
Yeah. So
6, yeah.
two.
Hopefully chuck a couple of finals
2
in
years
as well.
Other
that
years
helps boost the numbers.
Yeah, he could do it easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, injury permitting, but he's been very durable. He's missed very few games with injury over the journey. So, hope that continues too.
What did you... we didn't have this sort of written down of what we're going to talk about, but, we've had the last few weeks, everyone sort of saying... I mean, there's a lot of media people sort of saying, this team, can go all the way or go very deep into September, but there's still a lot of people saying that, we've played no one yet. And even, and then rolling out the excuse for Adelaide, they're injury riddled at the moment. And sure, they did have injuries, but you can't totally dismantle a team like that without getting some credit, injuries or not. And no, they were beating other teams. So what does that say?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't show up. That's fair to say that the Crows team that was there just totally didn't show up from the first bounce. But yeah, it's not a bad team otherwise. It's certainly a much better team on paper than Carlton, and we only kicked 3 goals or won by 3 goals less. So it's definitely we've got to watch what happens. I think this week I'm hoping that we win. I think we should win, but the old I think
when we expect it.
The depression syndrome makes me just a bit concerned about that. But it's really those 2 games after the Collingwood and Port games that are going to show really where we're at against the best sides.
But did they not show up? Did they not show up, or did we shut them down?
I tend to think we shut them down.
I
think they definitely put the white flag up quickly, easily, and without any fight whatsoever. But we dominated from the beginning. So you can
the lead we
put a team into
to,
submission quickly.
The lead we jumped to helped to encourage them to put the white flag up and give in for the day. So probably a little bit of both. 31 points or even 4 goals. They got it back to 3 goals before that free kick to Neil Bullen right at the end of the quarter. That would have been a margin that they could very much have got. But I think that by that Neil Bullen goal at the end, where the bloke sort of went for a bit of a jog in the back line and he nailed him with the tackle, I think that just put him away entirely. And then Smith, I think, got the goal about 30 seconds into the next quarter, and they were just never seen again.
Jonathan Brown's on the couch reckons we've got 11 All-Australians, or potential All-Australians, in our team. Obviously, that's not gonna come to fruition. They never sort of gift that. But who do you reckon? Did he list who he was talking about?
I was only half paying attention, and I think he might have named a few. I thought he said elite players, but he may have said...
no, he did say All-Australian.
All-Australian, there you go. But, well, we can try him out. Gawn is obviously one.
Yeah. Gawn, Hibberd, Oliver.
Hibberd, Oliver, Hogan.
Yep.
Oscar McDonald.
I don't know if he was
might
thinking.
be a acquired taste for Melbourne fans only.
Yeah.
Jetta would be one of them. He's a fan of Jetta, no doubt.
I think if he's talking about elite players versus all Australians, probably Tom McDonald would probably get a run there. Melksham, even.
Yeah.
Last few weeks he's had.
Well, I'm totally off now. The AFL player.
Viney, yeah.
I'm totally off the AFL team of the week. Not that I ever use that as a barometer, but after they gave us against the Carlton game 5, and this week they only gave us 2 players in there, I thought it was criminal for Michael Hibberd not to be named in that team, and I will not be looking at that team for the rest of the year.
Did we get an update on the player ratings this week? Did anyone top Jake Melksham's greatest game in the history of AFL football?
Well, it wasn't mentioned.
The player ratings.
It wasn't mentioned, but the media, everyone's loving Jakey Melksham at the moment. They love the stats that are coming out of his game. So let's roll on the good times.
The age didn't give a vote to Angus Brayshaw, and they've got that voting system where it's not they give out 4 votes.
Yeah, it's like 8. Everyone gets 8 votes.
Yeah, well, they couldn't find anything for Gus, so way off the mark.
Well, I saw Maxi got 8 votes in that, and I was just having a look at his stats. He had only 12 possessions, 2 kicks and 10 handballs. I mean, arguably his ruck work was fantastic. He was just palming it down all day to our advantage. But yeah, I thought, I don't know, he got the 8 votes in that game, and for Brayshaw to get done, I thought that was strange.
Yep.
That's not taking anything away from Maxi, because he's fantastic. He's in all-Australian form, and, we love Maxi, but, interesting.
It's a bizarre system. Is that set up just so everyone can go home happy and they don't have to make a decision on who the absolute best player was?
Well, it's like 3 people get 8 votes and 1 or 2 get 7.
Do they think someone's going to, write in or stop buying the paper because a certain player got the top vote? Come on, age, be more decisive. Make a decision.
Well, certainly the Demonland Player of the Year is... it's still a 4-horse race, but Angus Brayshaw made a run and has overtaken the 5th spot, but he's still a ways away from the top 4, who are just killing it. It's the same top 4 as it's been. I think Hogan and Jones sort of interchange from week to week in 3rd and 4th, but Maxi's leading from Oliver. And then I think Jesse this week is in 3rd and Jonesy's in 4th. Supermercado, how's your voting going?
Well, we've got. I didn't give Maximum any votes this week, but I gave Clayton a couple, so he's drawn level with Max at the top. So they're on 24, with Hogan 3rd on 21, and then a bit of a gap to Jones on 14 and Melksham on 11. And like your competition, I've got Brayshaw shooting up the ladder, so he's next in line now with 7.
Yeah, well, Melksham's just below Brayshaw, so
yeah. So at least my votes are being tested by the crowd on Demonland as well. So there's nothing weird going on. It was good. Jake Lever joined the club this week, pocketing his first votes in the Jakovic. So joins the very lengthy list of players who have pocketed a vote since 2005 in that august competition.
Yeah, I'd like to. I think one week you've got to compile your list of all people who have just got 1 vote in that award ever.
You won't be surprised to find out it's already been done.
Okay, I'm not surprised at all.
I can give you it right now. Just for just let me scroll down. I've scrolled down too far. Sorry, this is great radio. Guy Rigoni and James Seller are the only 2 players who have ever pocketed 1 vote. Guy Rigoni 1 vote in 2005.
Really?
The first year of the award. Obviously, that was the tail end of his
career.
Yes. So,
and
James Seller 1 vote in 2012. So they are currently the only men to have pocketed the single vote, and everyone who's got 2 is still on the list except a Mr. Jay Tumpus of Adelaide, who finished his career on 2 votes.
So how do you give the votes each week? What is it?
It's the 5-4-3-2-1
okay.
system, which I would say is the finest system in the land for delivering the votes. It gives you the chance to recognise
a few extra
players who you're not obviously vaulting people in just to get them a vote, but it gives you a chance to crack it open a bit more if you've got dominant players at the top of the tree. In fact, I'd like to see the Brownlow go to a 5-4-3-2-1 system. James
Seller must have had a ripper game that he got that 1 vote.
Pocketed 1. 2012. Yeah, it might have been that night we beat Essendon. But then again, it might have been one of the many times that we were just complete shite. And
we're struggling to find another person.
He tried very hard. So for the sake of the historical record, before the start of this year, the leader of all-time votes is Nathan Jones on 356.
Not surprised.
With the next closest man being Brad Green on 182.
Nice. Speaking of history, both John Northey and Hassaman came out this week and said, Northey reckons we've got the team to go all the way, and Hassaman said it's the best Melbourne list he's ever seen. Was he including the times he was playing? Because we had some pretty good teams back then, but
good question.
Melbourne people are getting on board the Demon train.
Neitz said in the paper today, and we'll talk about Nita a bit later, that he also thinks that there's nothing stopping us and the club needs to have a why not us mentality. Mm-hmm. Just believe, basically, that they can do it. So I was trying to think today, is this the most exciting Melbourne side I've seen? I think the only... maybe 94 was as exciting, 98.
Well, 94, I believe we probably should have won the premiership that year. Thought we got screwed sort of in the final series, but that was exciting. 98 was good.
I don't think the team was particularly that good in 98 because it really was, apart from Jeff White, Jamie Shanahan, and Travis Johnston. Yeah. It was pretty much the spoon team of 97.
Yeah.
But they just had such a great season, such a memorable season. But then the next year it reverted to type again. But then in 2000, we all know what weird scenarios were going on at that time. But I'd throw in 91 as well. There was those... You had that run where Darren Bennett was kicking big numbers of goals. You had the run where Cuthbertson was kicking big numbers of goals. Then, of course, Djakovic came along and took over there. That was an exciting team as well.
Yeah, look, I'm really excited about this team. It's the first time in a long time that we've had some false dawns and lots of rebuilds. We know that, but I think there's something special about this team, and my confidence is growing week to week. I've still got that nagging, waiting for the sky to fall feeling, but that's just my own insecurities. But yeah, there's something special about this group, and if they've got the belief and they can sort of, I won't say go all the way this year yet, but we're building towards it.
Yeah, we're the kings of contested balls, so that's really reassuring if you're sort of wondering, well, are we really that good? We all know contested footy is finals footy, so I think we're gearing up is the real deal.
Well, it's not just the contested footy that we're the kings at. The past month, we were leading 16 categories in the stats. A lot of stats being thrown around, but it's pretty impressive to lead in all those. And look, you're going to have the naysayers from other clubs and in the media saying, well, you didn't play anyone, so you should be. But there have been other teams around that are playing crap teams as well, and you're not seeing those numbers in particular being out. I mean, whenever they show these stats, you don't always see the dominant teams leading 16 categories out of other.
And it's not falling over the line against these teams either.
Yes.
We've pulverised 3 teams in a row. So, yeah, we don't want to get overconfident, but also you can't talk down. It hasn't been 3 battling wins in a row against lowly teams. They have been quite violent beatings. So I think that's got to stand us in good stead.
Yeah, definitely. There was what else? Yeah, did any of you watch Grapevine? I know you did. Did you see Ruzi on the couch talking about Daniel Cross in particular and his role in the rebuild? I really like that because, and I think even Gary Lyons said it on the show. Someone like Cross, he never sort of would be brought up in that context or getting any credit for anything, and it was really nice for him to get some credit in sort of coming over and sort of showing the boys at the time what sort of is required of a good successful footballer.
Really by all accounts, he's still as fit as he was then, and he's probably still setting standards in terms of sort of training and preparation. So the fact that he's sort of still down there is good as well. But it was good for Ruzi to acknowledge that, even though in a way he's patting himself on the back, Ruzi, in doing that, because obviously, that was a Ruzi move. But it was fascinating to hear his insights into what the club was like when he got there, and just the things about the negativity and the mindset. And I know that he said previously that what he really struggled with was that even when we'd have a win, it didn't improve confidence among the players. They'd come into training on a Monday and they'd be back in loser mentality, effectively. Winning was just so foreign that it didn't actually sort of build into momentum. And he and the coaching staff would have to sort of effectively lift them up again, even though they were coming off a win. So, I love listening to Ruzi talk about that kind of stuff, because it does sort of reveal just how far back we've come from and how far we've come, yeah.
And I think it's quite a contrast that you take Cross and Vince versus, say, Roden and Burns. Different types of players, different stages of their career, but it was almost like Roden and Burns were there just to be experienced players. And Burns, to bring the training, aspects from a successful team and things like that. So I'm sure there were a lot of benefits to bringing them in, probably Burns more than Roden. But the difference in impact that Cross had in that short time and Vince had in those few years, just a night and day difference in bringing an experienced player in.
Yep.
Well, speaking about the insights of Paul Roos, I think this is probably a good opportunity to make an announcement. And in the coming weeks, in a couple of weeks, Demonland will be interviewing Paul Roos on this very podcast. So we're very thankful to Paul for this opportunity. And, if you've got any questions that you want us to ask Roosie, feel free to send into Demonland, and we'll make sure we ask the pressing questions, because there's a lot that I'd love to ask Roosie about, and even just thank the guy for.
Well, I was going to say we're going to need to stay disciplined, that we actually ask questions and not just spend 15 minutes praising him and saying amen over and over again. So,
I think something I'd be interested in with Roosie was he always talked about, you have to build the team from defence first. You have to get that right first. And we had that, particularly the one season, 2014, I think, or 2015, where we scored at such a low rate. It was actually, it wasn't painful to watch at times because we'd tightened it up at the other end. But I'd be interested in his views on how that has sort of followed through to now, given that defence really doesn't have anybody except Jetta that was there at the time. It's how that philosophy flows to the rest of the team as well and contributes to the success 4 or 5 years later.
Grapevine, are you writing that down?
Yes.
We'll listen back to it. But you're right. I'm wrapped. I hope not just fawning over him. But it's a great opportunity, and we're looking forward to it.
Good get.
Yeah, very good. Also, Lyon mentioned during the week on his radio show, he said, just going back to Clary, because I forgot to mention it while we're talking about him, that he reckons he's one of the best players to emerge in 20 years. And that's not just for the Melbourne Football Club. That's across the board in the AFL. I mean, I'm sure I don't need to convince you guys about that fact, but
I think it's one of those things where people would, if you weren't either paid to analyse footy or obsessive about what's happening at Melbourne, I think a lot of fans of other teams wouldn't see a lot of the things he does because it just happens in the blink of an eye. There's the occasional sort of one-handed pick-up and awesome handball over the head that you can't fail to miss. But so much of it is just done. He gets a handball, he dishes it off perfectly to someone, almost with that sixth sense that they're going to be there. I think he's still a very underrated player, which is probably a good thing. We probably don't want articles like this drawing the wider attention of the world to what he's doing. Whether one of the best to emerge in the last 20 years is hyperbole or not. I think SEN has a history of putting things on their website that people click through to because they want to yell and scream about the point they're making. But I think for a player that was a surprise at going so high in the draft, and there were those questions over him, did he only have that great second half of the season because all the players had gone off to play in the carnival and things like that? He's certainly proven that the recruiters absolutely nailed that pick, possibly like no other pick in recent years, coming from absolutely nowhere.
Yep, absolutely.
Look, it doesn't matter whether we're talking him up or not. I'm sure opposition clubs know all about Clayton Oliver, and that's opposition club coaching staff. But support. I've got mates who don't see any Melbourne games because we're usually at the arse end of the footy week, and we don't get much TV coverage. So no one really. A lot of supporters of other clubs don't get to really see Clayton Oliver, and I can't wait till we play some of these clubs and just let him loose because he's beautiful to watch. Do we want to talk about what's changed? There was a good thread on Demonland, I thought, this week about what's changed since our last loss. What's been the turnaround? Do you guys have points of your own or want to rehash anything from there? I mean, it's obvious. I think having Tom McDonald and Jack Viney in the last couple of weeks, they've certainly allowed other players to come into their own. With T-Mac, you got Hogan being able to be sort of unleashed, and then the midfield with Viney. What else, guys?
Well, there's also the timing of the back line as well. So that first 4 or 5 weeks, they were all getting used to Lever and then each other again, and so that coincided with the return of sort of T-Mac in a way. The back lines started to gel at that point, where it's now become a finely tuned machine. So that's also been important.
And I think it seems that now we tend to have a player sitting back more in case there's a turnover or a surprise forward entry, whereas before they were having it kicked over their head a lot. I would also definitely say Tom McDonald's comeback, and not just because of what he's done, but what it frees up Hogan to do as well. You've got, like I said before, that Richmond game where we needed 2 Jesse Hogans. We needed him kicking it to himself inside 50. With McDonald, they're different players, but it just does give us that opportunity that I think personally I would prefer Hogan up the ground kicking it towards McDonald rather than McDonald up the ground kicking it towards Hogan. But it does give us that flexibility to sort of, blind some opposition teams with science and run one of them through there and bring the other one in, and to have those more options of people to aim at.
One thing I've noticed as well in terms of defence is earlier on in the year we were all flying for marks or into the contest, and no one was down, and I think that sort of stopped. We're not having 4 players fly for the ball. That certainly helped in defence.
And you don't have 5 players going for the ball on the ground either. You've got 1 going in, maybe 2, and everyone's getting ready otherwise on the outside.
We've no injuries, kicking straight has helped. I
noticed in the thread, confidence gets a mention as well, and that's immeasurable, as it says in there. But I think players like Neil Bullen, who 4 weeks ago, even when those first couple of games we won, he was sort of being talked about as an omission. Give him a week in the twos or something like that. But he is just flying. He's just playing like he's having the time of his life.
I'll add Harms to that same scenario as well. I think he's really. We didn't talk about him earlier, but his contribution has been fantastic the last couple of weeks.
He's proving pretty good in the middle, isn't he? He's more than holding his own when he's part of the centre square rotation. So it's great to see.
I didn't mention, and I've just remembered it now, if you do want to call and join us to talk about anything, we've got a couple of ways to do that. Give us a call, 03 9016 3666. That's 03 9016 3666, or Skype us, Demonland 31. Or we've got the chat room, demonland.com/podcast. Get in there. If you're signed up with Demonland, you can chat with us. Got about 100 people live listening at the moment, so yeah, get on board. Next, while my page refreshes.
I think you wanted to talk about the Casey game.
I did, yeah, that was the next thing on the list. So, Casey time. I know Drunken167 said he was going to call in, so Drunken, give us a call. You know where to catch us. I take it none of you guys went to Casey this week. I certainly don't have the time for 2 footy games a week.
No, I don't have the time for the hour and a half trip there at the moment.
So we've got Drunken on the line now. Drunken, good evening. How are you?
Good evening, guys. What a time to be a Melbourne Football Club supporter, hey?
Well, it certainly beats... who did you support before the Dees?
I was a Geelong supporter.
Okay, there you go. So it's still
going to be better than them.
Yes, a game and percentage. You went down to Casey this weekend. How was it?
Yeah, it was good. It was a hard-fought game. I don't think the boys expected Port Melbourne to play the way they did, and Port Melbourne probably deserved the win. But I think a few boys stepped up and were able to get over the line.
They kicked terribly, from what I've read. Certainly in the, I think, what did they have in the first quarter? 2 goals, 9 or something.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they hit the post 5 times in a row in that first quarter.
Yeah, I think I read that in the wrap up of the game. So certainly they probably should have beaten us, but good to get a win. So how did I see Billy Stretch was BOG. How did he go?
Yeah, so he was fantastic. He's played some really good games this year. The Box Hill game stands out. He was a bit quieter the week previous versus Frankston, which he really should have been a bit better, especially given the poor opposition. But he bounced back really well to easily be the best on ground this week. His disposal efficiency was a lot better. He was involved in a lot of the run through the middle, and his stoppage work was as good as I've seen from him this year.
You got to feel sorry for Billy a bit because his form the last few weeks has been good, but it's almost impossible to get into this team at the moment. Guys, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's going to be very hard unless they start rotating players out. But even then, if you're rotating players out and replacing them with blokes who have played in the VFL, is there that much benefit? So I think it's definitely going to be hard for the likes of Stretch and even Tyson to get back in. I noticed he had 27 possessions. Can we get a indication of were they quality possessions? Did they hit the mark?
Yeah, so looking at my stats here, I've actually got Tyson down as having 35 touches and 2 goals.
Right.
You keep your own stats, do you, Drunken?
Well, the stats that Casey give up are separate from the ones that I get off an app, which I'm pretty sure comes straight from Champion Data. So there's a bit of discrepancy there.
That's a huge discrepancy.
We'll go with yours. They sound better.
So, yeah, Tyson, he started poorly, very poorly. I'm pretty sure every single kick he had in the first quarter went straight to an opposition. So it looked like he was going to be having an absolute stinker, but after about halfway through the second quarter, he really stepped up and finished the game strongly. He was involved in a lot of forward stoppages, which turned into goals. He kicked 2 goals himself. Both were fairly nice goals, like snaps around Paxton, that kind of stuff. As I said, finished with 35 disposals, including 18 kicks. He had 10 marks and 10 tackles for the day, so he finished very strongly.
Yeah, Vogon Poetry in the Casey thread agreed with you. He said as the game wore on, he was more influential, but on form, he still thinks that Nibbler and Harms have gone past him. And yeah, so I think it's going to be hard for Dom Tyson to crack into the team as well, barring some injuries or rotations.
What are your thoughts on Jeffy, Drunken?
Yeah, Jeff, I think he's just lacking a bit of confidence at the moment. He didn't have a hell of a lot of touches. I'm just looking really quick, but he kicked a really nice goal. It was sort of one of the Casey listed players, James Munro, tackled a defender in the pocket, and Jeffy just sort of swooped on off one step and snapped it from 45 from basically the boundary and went straight to the middle, which was impressive. But other than that, he was fairly quiet. He only had 16 touches for the game, only had 1 tackle. So I think he just he needs to find the ball a bit more to really sort of get back playing his best footy. But yeah, we'll see how he goes.
Is he spending time in the midfield or is he just up forward?
It's mostly in the midfield. He does go forward often, but it's mostly midfield time.
Yeah, do you guys find that strange? I know that a lot of the times when they put those guys down to the VFL level, they do go into the midfield. Like Jay Kennedy Harris would probably play in the seniors in the forward pocket, as would Jeffy, and they seem to go into the midfield when they play in the VFL. But I don't know, should he be played in his position when he goes to VFL level, or do you reckon they just want him to getting a lot of touches of the ball to find some touch?
I think a mixture of the twos, fair enough. You know, you do see him occasionally go through the middle in the ones as well. But I would personally prefer, as an armchair pundit, to have him play most of the time down forward if that's where we're expecting him to play when he comes back in the seniors.
Well, according to Vogue on Poetry, he's not banging the door down, and also from Drunken's reports. So for me, that's very disappointing because I love Jeffy. I want to see, I always imagined a successful Demons team would have him, bobbing up for 2 to 4 goals. And he's nowhere near that at the moment. So,
And I thought Sunday would have been a great day for him. He would have loved just running out the back with Crows defenders miles away. It would have really played to his ability to get out the back. But there's no point bringing him back with everyone else down forward firing like they are.
But it's the type of guy that you could have put in last week, and he probably would have, in the team and in the game we played, he probably would have kicked a bag of goals. But he's got to get into that team first, and certainly the form isn't. He's not producing that type of footy to get back in. And you have a look at Hannon and Spargo bobbing up for their goals each week, and they're keeping their spots. So barring any rotations. And we keep saying it about Spargo or at least Spargo, that they might give him a rest, but doesn't look like he needs a rest at the moment. He's taking marks and getting the ball all around the ground. So,
D Oldfart says that Deck had a great game, Drunken.
Yeah. So I usually keep a lid on it when I'm talking about Deck, but today I'm gonna put on my big brother glasses, and he was unbelievable. I probably got a bit over the top, but it was honestly one of the best games I've ever seen, especially considering he's had a relatively slow start to the season, giving out a couple of late injuries, and then especially since he had that concussion issue last week, missed one of the days training throughout the week. To come out and play the way he did was unbelievable. The start of the game, he was in everything. The 3 talls, him, Frost and Petty, were very good all game. But he was in everything at the start. Basically, any ball that was kicked into the fence, he got over and was able to contest. And then, so at the moment, because Wiedemann was injured, and then Bull Smith's obviously playing seniors, and Pato was the travelling emergency, Casey never really had that key marking forward. And then they've sort of been using Mitch White in that position. But he went down, unfortunately, with a shoulder injury halfway through the third quarter, and it doesn't look too good, but hopefully he can get over that. So the coach, Jade Rawlings, threw Deck forward and immediately impacted the game, and Rawlings himself said Declan was probably the reason Casey were able to get over the line. Kicked an important goal, was reminiscent of that T-Mac against Carlton, where he sort of just read it from the back of the pack and was able to turn around and have a clear shot. It was almost like a mirror image of that exact goal. He was able to be that link-up player that Casey were missing all game, so coming out of the back 50, he was able to run up and take that big mark to dish it off when they were able to run forward. I'm pretty sure he took 10 marks for the day, and 3 or 4 of them were in that last quarter, and all marks he took turned into a Casey goal. You just,
good stuff.
As I said, it's hard for me not to be biased, but it was his best game for this season so far.
Good stuff.
Well, it's all right to have the lid off because our lid's starting to go off, so we sympathise with that. Other Melbourne listed players, Petty. Someone said that Petty looks very similar to your brother. How did his game go?
Yeah, so very
Must
similar.
have been
Even
all
I
right.
get
He's
the two
been
mixed
signed
up
on
sometimes.
for an extra year. Sorry.
Yeah, it's like saying how they look similar. Even I get Deck and Petty mixed up sometimes. So, but Petty was great. He is a fantastic one-on-one player. He looks the goods, and like key defenders are hard to find. And he absolutely looks the goods.
Great. And as Grapevine mentioned, we did re-sign a couple of young guys earlier in the week, and Harrison Petty was one of them. Spargo and Fritsch the other two. So it was good to sort of lock those guys away, I think, till 2020. Who else? Balak, how did he go? I think he kicked a couple of goals, 3 goals.
Yep. So he was the highest goal scorer with 3 goals. He started the season well against Coburg, and then sort of slowed down a bit. Had a couple of weeks out with some issues, but this is his best game back since coming back in the last couple of weeks. He popped up, was really, really strong forward of the ball, was in a lot of contests, and pretty sure like his score involvements. I don't know exactly what they were, but it would have been a fair few. He set up a few goals and obviously kicked a few himself, so he was good.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I think last week, I having not seen the game, I was just disappointed based on his stats, considering we thumped a team by 100. He only kicked a goal, so it's good to see him get amongst the goals here and sort of contribute to the win. Because I would like to see Balak at some stage get a game. So, yeah. The other one, Oscar Baker, from what I've read, had a pretty impressive game, particularly the second half. Yeah,
so his first half was quiet, but his second half, especially the third term, he was unbelievable. He reminded me of Jaden Hunt when Hunt was up to his best. His run off half back and his involvement and speed and evasiveness through the centre was as good as I've ever seen.
How quick is he, Drunken? Is he as quick as Jaden?
Yeah, off the mark, I'd say probably not as quick, but pretty close too. And not only that, he's a very, very smart footballer, so he finds the right targets in sort of, he can get through a tiny gap, so if he sees a bit of space, he just takes off running like Hunt can and break those lines and have a real impact when he gets up and going.
Interesting.
Speaking of Hunt and Pedersen, I was super impressed to see during our game they were off on another oval running around in the heat, and I'm assuming that was a directive from the coaching staff, considering
something they were doing in their spare time.
Yeah, considering that they weren't playing that week, that they obviously wanted to keep those guys' fitness up, so they had them running around. But it's super impressive to see, and I thought that was good. Anyone else that caught your eye of the Demon listed players?
Yeah, so I'll quickly run through a few of the others we haven't spoke about. JKH, he had a solid game, 25 touches, a couple of goals, a couple of nice goals too. But the thing that really caught my eye about him was just his attitude at times throughout the game was just not what it should be. There was one particular play Garlett had the ball on the wing and was under pressure and kicked it towards JKH, and he shanked the kick slightly, and it was always going to hit the Port player, but as soon as the ball was kicked and Jay saw the ball wasn't coming to him directly, instead of trying to impact the contest, he just sort of stood still and sort of put his arms out, like saying, "What the hell was that?" Like, it's not like he just didn't try at all.
Yeah.
And that sort of speaks of how his season has been so far. He's just sort of, I don't know, it's just like he's not invested in the team like he once was. But that's been really critical, and I don't want to sort of dig into the bloke, but it just sort of didn't look like his head was sort of in the right place.
Yeah, that's disappointing. What about like Buggy? How did he go?
So Bug didn't have a lot of touches, I think 14 touches for the game, but he was good. Good up forward, kicked a couple of goals, one particularly very nice one, reading off of a throw up. He's sort of similar to Jeffy. Like, he does nice things when he gets his hands on the pill, just needs to find it a bit more, I think.
I think the only other one there, Frosty.
So Frost, like as I said, the three tools, Deck, Petty and Frost were fantastic all game, and Frost was no different. His marking and a couple of the runs off halfback was as good as he's done this year. He only had the 16 touches, but he got to a lot of contests, made a lot of spoils, and Frosty had a very strong game.
So it seems like we've got a few players that are sort of just waiting for their turn in line, but at the moment when you got the ones playing the way they are playing, it's very hard for some of these guys, even if they are showing form in the twos. So, I mean, it's a good problem to have because we've got some guys that can come in and do something. But, you sort of feel for some of them because it's going to be hard to break into this team, particularly when they're playing so well.
They would have to be favourites for the VFL flag now, surely.
What do you think?
It really depends, like, especially with an AFL line club, it really depends on injury and selection and that kind of stuff. Because they have a couple of, touchwood, hopefully not, they have a couple of injuries that can really sort of send them into a hole fairly quickly. Because you have so much changes constantly in the VFL team, it's hard to get that cohesion really strong.
Consistency as well of players, also, when we're going to have a few interstate games, we go to Darwin later in the year, and they seem to take one or two players away from that for those games. So, I see what you mean.
Just a couple more players real quick. So the two rucks, Flipper and King. So that was King's first game back off a few weeks out with an injury. So he was okay. I think it's going to take him a little bit of a while to get back to playing good footy. And Filipovic, his ruck work is very good at the moment, especially for only a second year. Players barely played any football. His ruck work was good, but he just needs to work around on the ground. Like, he got his hands to a lot of contests, but dropped a fair few marks, which he probably should have taken. And also Dion Johnston, because I've always liked Dion. I've been on record before saying I do like Dion, and he only had the 8 touches for the game, but some of his defensive efforts were the best I've seen from him. There was one particular play where Port were coming down the wing, and it looked like this bloke was easily going to take a uncontested mark, and Dion come from a good 20, 30 metres away and laid this massive spoil, punched it over the line, and like the crowd erupted. And I think that things like that from Dion are very promising if he can sort of keep up that defensive pressure. He's still only very, very young, so you might still come to a good player.
And there's also the other two players, probably Wagner and Smith. And from what I've read from Vogue on Poetry's thing, that neither of them played the house down. Yeah,
like they weren't obviously in the best, but they weren't bad either. They both had decent, solid games, and that's really all you can ask for when the rest of the team's sort of playing some decent footy.
So who have Casey got coming up this week?
So we're playing Williamstown in Williamstown. I think they're sitting roughly about the same place we are on the ladder, so it's always hard beating them there because they play really, really well at that ground. But I saw the Wiedemann is back available this week, and obviously being a Saturday game, all the emergencies will be able to play. So I think we should give Williamstown a good run for their money.
Excellent, boys. Any other questions for the drunken?
Nope.
Covered it all. I was interested in Frost. It does seem like a long time since the theory was going around that I must say I was signed up to, that we had to get him in that back line to get it going again. It's certainly not being talked about as much now.
No, with the year that Oscar McDonald's having, and then all the Hibberd back in form, and Lever coming into the team, it's made it very hard for Frosty to get in at the moment. And I don't know, where do you see into Frosty in terms of Harris and Petty? Are they sort of on level, or do you reckon Petty's going to get a game before him?
So I think Frost is still ahead of Petty at the moment. Because Petty's good, but he still makes a couple of mistakes most games, and that can be attributed down. He's only a first-year player, and obviously Frost has been in the system a bit more than he has. And so if we need to bring in another backman for whatever reason, I think Frost would definitely get the go ahead of Petty at the moment.
I think the good thing that we've got going with Petty is that we've got the luxury to develop him in the twos. In the past, we were sort of very quick to get any young guys that had a little bit of talent, get them straight into the team. So it's good that we have that luxury to play him in the twos.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you for your report, as usual. Very insightful, and we thank you for your contribution. And you get to the games and are able to give us, all of us at Demonland, a bit of insight, because, as we say, we can't get to those games, and they're not televised all that often. So thank you.
No worries, mate. Before I go I just want to tell a quick story from a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
So you guys mentioned it, but I thought Viney didn't get the recognition in the media this week that he deserved.
Yep.
To come back in his second game, which is usually a blunder out of 8 months out of the game, and have 35 touches and 20 contested possessions with only 72% game time, was just unreal. When he played that Box Hill game, after all the games, all the boys of both teams come into the social rooms, and the coaches will get up and say a few words and then have a couple of drinks before everyone sort of goes their own way. And Billy Stretch was best on ground that day. And so they got him to come up to the front of the crowd, and he gave a little speech. And I'm going to paraphrase here, but he said that it was amazing being able to walk out onto the ground with Jack Viney standing next to him. Because he said every time you walk onto a ground with Viney there, you just stand that much taller, and you're just that much more confident, and then you just play that much better. And I think that's translated over to the AFL team. You can tell when Viney's up and about, the rest of the boys are just unbelievable.
You just brought a tear to my eye. No, well said. Even as supporters, I stand tall when Viney's on the field, and he had a fantastic game, no doubt. Thank you for the report, and we'll speak to you next week.
All right, thanks guys. Have a good one.
Cheers.
Good on you, Drunken.
That was Drunken 167. Always with the Casey reports for us, and he does a good job. Moving on to the game this week, injury list, there's not much to talk about. Wiedemann is back, but you would assume he's going to play in the twos. I don't think they're going to swap out him with Tib Smith, because I think that's the change for him. Any other changes you could see, fellas?
Not unless someone was tired and needed a rest, but I wouldn't have thought so. No.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought so. I wouldn't have thought so going into this week. I know it's a shorter break versus the Bulldogs, and they will have had longer break. But I think we just get the people through this week, get that extra day going into Queen's birthday, and we should be able to manage everyone through Queen's birthday.
Now we're back at our fortress. We play well there now, so I'm happy with that. Now, do you know? I think is this week officially the Indigenous round. So I know the Bulldogs are going to be wearing their Indigenous strip. Are we wearing our Indigenous strip?
I'm not sure. I know Adelaide weren't allowed to wear theirs last week because it clashed with ours, which is a first.
Yes.
The Indigenous round jumper clash.
Do you know what happened with that? Because I'm assuming, because they had the photo of Jeddah and Eddie Betts both wearing their Indigenous Guernseys. So it seems like Adelaide... Do you think Adelaide were initially going to be playing in their Indigenous Guernsey?
No,
and then
I think they brought that just for the photo opportunity.
Okay, because it seemed...
I think they knew well ahead of time that it was going to clash and that it didn't happen.
It didn't.
I don't think it was a last-minute change.
It wasn't couriered in on a plane.
Get the Royal Flying Doctor Service or something else from ours, yeah.
Because when I saw that photo opportunity, I thought, typical AFL. They make such a song and dance about us clashing with teams that I don't think we necessarily clash with, and then they come out and do this. But I'm glad that that didn't end up happening.
I actually really enjoyed the whole Alice Spring experience last week, and I say that I was watching it from the comfort of my couch. I wasn't there, but I love the club's involvement with the community. The fact that you've got the Nirapi Demons,
yep.
Who are about 500k away in the desert. They make the long trek to Alice Springs and give a lot of good support. There was the re-recording of Grand Old Flag in the local language,
yep.
which if you haven't seen that, go and have a look and look at the translation, because it's an adaptation rather than just a translation of Grand Old Flag. So that was really good, I thought. And it's great to see. That they got a full stadium for the first time in that match too. So, as much as I'm a fan of bringing the two NT games back to Melbourne and the MCG, I thought it was really well done on the weekend.
I wonder if there's some opportunity in the future to potentially ditch Darwin and keep this one on its own.
Both at the Atlas.
We might lose a bit of money in comparison. And I thought it was interesting, an article in the paper that suggested we wouldn't necessarily play the game that came back to Victoria at the MCG, because we're only contracted there for a certain amount of games, which, as we know, Fortress shithole at Docklands is now, it's not so bad to have to go and play games there, but I'm not sure we're gonna drag in as many people as we would at the G. I just wonder if, potentially, you could see that Channel 7 had obviously had a bung from the Northern Territory government as well to basically turn the coverage into an episode of Postcards. So I'm wondering if that was going to happen every year, and every year it was going to be treated as a good game, get put in as premium a slot as you can get for a day game over the weekend, whether there would be an opportunity to sort of maybe take a 75% of what we get now, and let someone else take Darwin. I think, unfortunately, if it's all or nothing, at the moment it still has to be all or nothing. But if there was a way we could keep Alice and really build around that, keep playing an AFLW game there every season, and then try and make a quarter of what the current income is back another way, I think that would be a more acceptable way at the moment of still getting the money, but also minimising the impact it has on the club.
Yeah, I can provide a little bit of insight in... sorry. Yeah,
I was going to say, then again, we might fall apart in a heap in the fourth quarter this weekend, and it'll be back to boo, get rid of Alice Springs. What are we going to play there for?
I actually do a bit of work with Sean Bowden, who's of the footballing Bowden family of Richmond, and big footy people in Alice Springs. The stadium's named after their old man, but he's very involved in AFL NT, and together with Lewis Martin from Channel 7, they cooked up this whole plan of, the game in the heart of the nation. And I think that Channel 7 are actually very keen on it, and the expense that they put into it this year I mean, they sent Daisy and BT up to do a promo thing weeks before, and devoting the whole day to it with the warm up game before. I think Channel 7 are sort of keen on the idea of turning it into a sort of a fixture each year. So the other thing is, once you become a good team, you start to worry less about giving up the home ground advantage that we were also sort of desperate to hold on to a few years ago, because once you sort of start thinking seriously about the home and away season, you really need to win everywhere, don't you? And we've had a better record away this season than we have at home. So, yeah, you sort of start to think that you're perhaps not giving up so much in a football sense.
Well, I'd be interested in talking to your David Neitz of the world to say what's the difference between playing in this sort of warm Alice Springs versus sweaty Darwin. What's the impact for the future? Is there an impact? You know, you see players. I saw some fans on the boundary line the other day, but we weren't getting shots every 5 seconds of players pouring ice water over their head and hanging out in a meat locker like they do in Darwin. What is it a lesser physical? Is it a bit more physically taxing to play in that really sweaty Darwin atmosphere versus Alice Springs?
You would think so, but also it was an unseasonably warmer day than is usual for that time of year. I think it's usually 22, 24 degrees, and this was a hot 27 degrees. But I believe later in the game, and they said it on the commentary, once the clouds came in, that heat sort of dissipated. So you would think that Darwin is going to have more of an impact. I believe teams of... Was it Brisbane who played up there one year when we were on IV drips or something at half time? I don't know.
Oxygen tanks or something like that. I look, and I think from promotional perspective, the Northern Territory, like a free-to-air game where, they basically had 4 or 5 hours of content, and they had, Daisy and BT on a camel, versus a Fox footy game on a Saturday night, Melbourne Freo. You get that promotional opportunity, but it's not. It's more, here's a shot of some mountains, here's a shot of wherever, on with the football. Like, would it be better for them to like pour all their resources into that one game and sort of treat the second one as a more of a throwaway? Hopefully, if we can get a deal out of that. But like I said, I think at the moment, if we're chucking the pokies as well, if it has to be both, then at least in the short term, I think personally we have to stick with both. Can I say my highlight was Daisy talking to the Nurrupi Demons on the boundary line, where she slipped and said something like, "Oh, thanks for coming to cheer us on."
Yeah, yes, she's demon through and through.
Chucked out any semblance of independence in that moment. It was great.
Yeah, but I also, because they were decked out in their Demons gear and
Well, the association between Melbourne and Nirrupi goes back quite a few years now. The club visits there every time it goes now. Apparently, the whole community is painted red and blue, and there's huge sort of Melbourne things everywhere, and they call the ground that they play on the MCG. So that association between the two clubs is fantastic. And as I say, the fact that they come 450 kilometres to the match is just awesome, I think.
I thought it was funny, the bloke that got interviewed, and he said he jumped on in 1985, and it's kind of you think to yourself, why? Why 1985? Like, there's so many other times where it would make sense for someone to just randomly jump on the Dees. It's just a very odd time. When she said, "How long have you been following the Dees?" I was expecting 87, 88, 85. It's like, why? Like, that's what I would have. I know Daisy wasn't there to do an in-depth analysis of 1985, but that would have been my next question to him. Yeah, why?
They could see the talent that was coming through in the seconds and thirds. But Destroy All makes a good point. We should make reference to the tree, the very famous tree, which obviously was only mentioned 200 or 300 times during the game by BT.
And I don't believe that was it Gilbert McAdam.
I
don't believe he kicked a goal from there. Unless
it was almost a
dribbled
back
through.
flank.
I remember a couple of years ago, the first time we played there, Fox botched their camera angles, and someone possibly Christian Salem was taking a shot on goal, and their camera was just like looking at the branches of the tree. So potentially it is a better thing to have Channel 7 there, even if the downside is obviously having to have BT be involved.
Yes.
I was interested in Bruce McAvaney calling for Alex Neil Baldwin at one point.
He did. He flubbed that one time, which is very unlike Bruce. But...
No, and you try commentating a game and see what happens. So yeah, when he's got a record like that, he's a bit, it's a bit like shooting Bambi to take the piss out of him, as opposed to a BT or a Dwayne.
I felt that Bruce didn't really give us the love earlier in the game. He sort of had no excitement for us, but any time Adelaide got the ball past the centre line, he sort of almost was in ecstasy.
How about the response when Eddie kicked that goal in the last quarter, when Salem A, dropped the mark, and then B, fumbled the ball on the ground, and Bruce absolutely wet himself.
Yeah.
Oh, Eddie, and it was little mate Salem couldn't have gifted the goal, anymore. So,
the funny thing is, that was straight after the one that they gifted us, where the guy fumbled it and Melbourne chipped in and kicked the goal. It was not a great couple of minutes for defence.
No,
it wasn't. Yes,
wasn't a good 4 quarters for defence if you're Adelaide.
Absolutely. If you do want to join us on the tail end of the show, 0390163666 or Demonland31 on Skype. So Jonesy plays his 250th game. We talked about it a little bit before, but get around the guy. Wrapped for him. Can't wait to see the banner this week. I'm sure we'll see his bald nut on the banner. They love when they pull out the pictures. Wrapped for Jonesy.
Yeah, he'd be loving life at the minute, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Look, if we're going to have some success this year, it's all for Jonesy. I'd love to see him play finals footy, because I'm sure every September since 2006, he'd probably hate September as much as I've hated September, but probably even more. So, I hope these guys get to have a bit of success, and for Jonesy.
I think it's good to have someone they can rally around as well. And again, like we were saying before, most of the players who are there now weren't there 5 years ago. So you don't want too many people who have suffered trauma. But, having someone like Jonesy who they can rally around, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, because I came on after 1987, but Robbie Flower in his last season, where it was like, do it for Robbie. Probably a lesser version of that, but it's something for people to rally around, that we really want to see Jonesy, lead us out in the final.
So it's interesting that the last time we won 5 games in a row, that was 2 weeks before Jonesy Jonesy got in the team.
Yeah.
So it's great that he's never won 5 games in a row, and this is fantastic. Now the other record that we're on the verge of breaking, and I really hope we do it, and is that 22 quarters in a row. What is the current record?
I think it's
21.
So we need to win all 4.
To run the line to beat it and win the first 3 to equal it.
And do you know how dirty I was in that last quarter when we were on the verge at one stage of not winning the last quarter? I would have almost taken the game as a loss had we not won that last quarter.
Well, they looked cooked early in the last, and I thought, we're going to concede a few here. But they kicked the last 4 goals of the game after having kicked the first 5, so... it was a very impressive way to finish.
Which was nice to see, because a few weeks ago when we played Essendon and St Kilda, we sort of gave up a few goals at the end. So this was good that they were able to go finish a game. Even though we could have taken the foot off the pedal and rested some guys, they still ran out the game and kept that record intact. Grapeviney, we were speaking during the week about that. So that is an all-time record, 22 quarters. Do we know that for a fact?
Well, it's 21. It was Geelong.
So I found that hard to believe that it's so low.
It's
for an all-time
sort of
record.
Think about some of the dominant sides, including our own in the 50s and Hawthorn in the in the late 80s, you would have thought that it'd be more, but it's obviously not.
So you don't know how badly I want this record. Is it silly of me to want a record like this? I don't know.
I think so.
We are
collect
getting
them.
Yeah, collect them. You're right. Great finding. What did you say?
No, so we're also getting to the point where that thread, which is when will we break these embarrassing records, we can almost retitle that thread to when will other clubs break our embarrassing records. Yeah. We're starting to sort of flip them on their heads now, so it's good to see.
Is there anything on that still, with the exception of finals and premierships, on there that we need to still knock over?
Do we have someone kicking 10 on there? Is that a... I mean, it could happen.
But that doesn't, you know what? No one kicks big bags like that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it has happened in the last few years. I think it's only, apart from a couple of slaughters against, GWS in their early days when the Adelaide Tom Lynch kicked 10 and Rewalt kicked 10, and obviously Franklin did it at least once. It can happen.
We seem to be sharing the load around in terms of goals. We get a lot of, the threes and the twos, and you get a five like Hogan.
I'd like to think there's one massive bag in someone's future. One of the St Kilda games we lost a couple of years ago where Hogan kicked 7.
7, yeah.
And he had an absolute sitter for an 8th that he missed. So, yeah, I'd obviously for sheer comedy value of Tom McDonald not having kicked a goal for his first 59 games of his career, I'd love him to come out and rip 10 one day. But I don't think it's completely out of the question that we could really start smacking someone around one day and someone could get 8 or 9 goals.
Well, I look forward to that. We had one other amazing thing that happened this week, and it was last night. David Neitz getting inducted to the AFL Hall of Fame, and what a great bloke. I love Nita. Great bloke, great captain of the club, great player. I'm sure you guys were wrapped with that. Did we know that was happening, or you don't know until the night?
You don't know until the night, but his name was certainly being mentioned as a possibility, and a very, very just reward for a really good player. Not too many players who I think he made All-Australian at either ends of the ground, and certainly Wayne Carey nominated him and Glenn Jakovic as his 2 most difficult opponents. So to get that kind of recognition from one of the all-time great centre-half forwards shows just how good he was at centre-half back. So great player.
And I think an interesting sliding doors, and not in the Damien Barrett way, is to think about what would have happened if James Cook hadn't injured himself early in 2000, because that was sort of what sent him down. I'm pretty sure he was playing down back early in 2000, and then when Cook got injured, I think he kicked 6 in his second game, got injured in his third game, and was never seen again. That's when Nita was never seen in the back line again. So what would have happened if Cook hadn't been injured? Because he certainly kicked on for 7 or 8 years in the forward line after that.
Yeah,
what? Go ahead.
I was just going to say that somebody mentioned in the thread acknowledging Nita that they remember a fantastic goal that he kicked from in front of the members deep on the boundary, and that reminded me, Andy, of that. Well, it was the Gary Lyon pocket. Firstly, he never missed from there, and Nita never did either. When he was 50 out, hard up against the boundary in front of the MCC there, he never failed to nail that kick. And he had a beautiful kick on him.
I think my favourite was the night where we had the big parade of all the old players. I think it was round 2, 2004, because there'd been a bit of off-field shenanigans. And they wanted a bit of unity, and they had all the old players do a lap around the ground, and then he came out and kicked 9 against Richmond, and I'm pretty sure he had a reasonable opportunity for the 10th as well, and I think he may have passed it to Aaron Davey or something like that. That was a spectacular game. I know he also kicked 9 against Carlton, but that was definitely my favourite of his games.
My favourite goal of his was that crunching bump on McCabe,
Yes.
and then was able to pick up the ball and kicked a great snap. Great player.
McCabe will be happy to see that getting a run
Yeah.
everywhere again the next few days.
He'll be still feeling sore from that, I think. Love Nita as, great bloke, great player. Good on him. Anything else, boys, before we wrap it up for another week?
I think we should win this week. I'm not expecting it to be another freewheeling slaughter like the last few weeks, but you never know. The way we're playing at the moment, it might be we either win by 100 or lose by 20. So let's hope it's more the former than the latter.
We've got a great opportunity going into the bye. If we can bank 2 wins, let's take 1 week at a time, though. But if we can get a win this week, they're gonna. And if Collingwood win this week, there's going to be a massive crowd Queen's birthday. What do you reckon?
Could end up being a larger crowd than the Anzac Day Eve, because Collingwood have got Freo. So yeah, there's every chance they will win.
So that would be nice. And our home game, Collingwood.
Yep.
Good bank.
We know, but we need Watts to beat Collingwood. So we saw that last year. So.
Well, I don't think we do. He who shall not be named. I'm.
No one's thinking about Jack Watts, are they?
I don't think his name's been mentioned on Demonland this entire month, which is probably a first.
It probably is. Yeah.
I haven't seen him mentioned, but I don't think we're missing him at all. So, let's move on. All right, guys. Supermercado, you want to give your plugs?
Yes, I'll give the old hat trick. You can get me on Twitter at DemonBlog, on the blog at demonblog.com, and then of course demonwiki.org for all your obscure historical facts.
Oh, now that you've mentioned it, gotta go see who my random photo of the week.
I've got a Jeff White 2006 Brownlow predictor footy card.
I've got Andrew Obst. What a player! Loved him. Injury
and
prone.
I have got.
You don't know who it is, do you?
Joe Smith, 1926. So premiership player.
That sounds like a made-up name.
Joe Smith, 1926. He's in the team.
Speaking of Jeff White, he posted on Instagram the other day video of his son, his eldest son, breaking a high jump record set in 2002 at his high school or whatever he's in at the moment. Kid's going to be very tall. Let's hope he can play footy as well.
You might get a game. You'll have to get through a few of the Hall of Fame legends that we're developing at the moment.
Yes, exactly. All right, boys. Thank you very much for joining us, Supermercado and Grapeviney, and thank you to Drunken for your Casey reports. We'll be back same time next week.
Thank you.
Go Dees.
Go Dees.